What's up, Meta Nerds? This video is all about the R-Series Astromech Droid. It was manufactured by Industrial Automata, the same people that brought us the Gonk and the rest of the R-Series Astromechs. This series started with the R1, which despite its look, was actually pretty revolutionary for its time, and was the first astromech of this type that was able to calculate hyperdrive coordinates, but it could still only make one jump at a time. This was an improvement on the P2, which as you can see looks a lot like the R2, but it was extremely glitchy and incorporated some tech that got Industrial Automata sued and forced the entire project to be abandoned. The R1 was a huge success, but it was still large and clunky as it was nearly the size of a Wookiee and had the maneuverability of a Bantha. Industrial Automata knew that in order to really dominate the astromech market, they had to improve the hyperdrive calculation capabilities while making it smaller, more agile, and pack in even more tools and tech. The R-Series Astromech Droid blew away the competition in each of these categories, improving upon the single jump of the R1 to multiple hyperspace jumps in the R2, cutting the height in half to just 1 meter, about the size of a Jawa, and it was relatively light at 32 kilograms or about 71 pounds. And of course, every little space in this droid was put to work, having some sort of useful tool or gadget. There really are a lot of features packed into the R2, so let's take a look past its Durasteel plating and see where everything was and how it all worked. Up top, we have these two hydraulic tubes that would give it a periscopic visual system, allowing the R2 to see things that most astromechs his size could not. And it also had this life form scanner, which would always come in handy when looking for your allies or potential enemies. Its primary photoreceptor eye was located in the middle, and this blinking light would indicate the state of its internal processor. These two blinking lights on the side were its logic function displays, basically a way for organics to know that its R2 is running computations. Behind this plate was a pneumatic ejection tube, which was originally designed to fire emergency flares, and this is what was modified by Luke in order to store and fire his lightsaber. This nozzle housed a fire extinguisher, and this is the first of several arms on the R2, with this one mostly being used for in-flight maintenance. The main optical holographic projector was located here, but there was also a secondary holographic projector located on the back of his head, right next to another diagnostic display. Modifications could be made to the head unit in order to allow it to carry drinks and a serving platter, but all Astromech series came stock with a feature that allowed the entire head section to extend from the body, a feature that was necessary for the Naboo N1 starfighter, as the shaft containing the droid socket was longer than that found in most starfighters. This slot up front could take a spacecraft data card, that way it could work on any type of ship, even ships that it wasn't already programmed to work on. These two blue arms would extend out and hold on to the spacecraft, and there was also the Universal Computer Interface arm located here, with this other large compartment housing the Fine Manipulator arm, an arm that could both interface and grab things, as well as a third, general purpose grabbing arm. And this section also contained the always handy utility saw. Sounds were produced through a speaker located here, and this area served as heat ventilation. Each of these smaller panels allowed for different ways for the R2 to interface with the ship, and the slots here were all system diagnostic ports, which allowed the R2's owner to perform checkups. A small charging arm was located here, with these lights on the side being power indicators. If the computer interfacing arm didn't work, or you wanted to upgrade your R2's programming, you had this multi-port utility socket. These panels on the back of an R2 were for extra storage and housed the tow cable, and there were additional heat exhausts. Each leg had a hydraulic shaft, which could raise or lower the height of an R2, but they also contained these propulsion booster turbines. Fuel for these were stored here, right above the foot, as well as the hydraulic fluid, which was used for the rest of its systems. The drive motor was located here, and each of its feet, including this third retractable leg, had these all-terrain drive treads, so that it could make it through a variety of different terrains. When inside of a starfighter, it could help the pilot monitor the condition of the ship, target enemies, and even take control of most starfighters and fly them back to safety if their pilot was ever incapacitated. It could also magnetize its feet, allowing it to travel along the surface of larger ships to perform some repairs, but it could also use the magnetic feet to make sure it wasn't sucked out through an airlock. Now if you were lucky enough to get a particularly special model, like say R2-D2 for example, then your astromech could use a lot of these tools in very creative ways. First off, it could simply use its claws to handle a blaster, though this was very rare. Or it could dump some of its lubricant, and then set it on fire by using its thrusters. It could also shock people with its charging arm, or use its cutting tool as a brutal sawing weapon. The tow cable could be used to help allies, or it could be used to trip people, or rip things apart. And of course, its ability to access nearly any computer system allowed the R-Series Astromech to cause all kinds of havoc. Most starfighters were designed around an R-Series Astromech socket, and would be able to incorporate its successors since they all kept a similar shape. So that's it for the R-Series Astromech, but you definitely want to hear these cool facts and behind the scenes stuff. The in-universe explanation for why R2 doesn't have rocket boosters in the original trilogy is because it was a complicated and expensive system to maintain, and that Industrial Automaton had only set the warranty for 20 standard years, which would have lasted to around 13 ABY for R2-D2, and that it was a particular type of fuel used in them, which became even more difficult to attain after the reign of the Empire. The R2 that we saw on screen were very similar to these early drawings, but as you can see, this version rotated on this sphere, inspiring the design of BB-8. The actor for the original R2-D2 was Kenny Baker, who was a 3-foot 5-inch tall comedian who was initially reluctant to take time off stage in order to play a role in which his face wouldn't even be shown. But George Lucas was able to convince him to join the film by telling him that R2-D2 was essentially the narrator of Star Wars. This is reflected in-universe as well, as the entire story of the Skywalkers was told to the Keeper of the Wills via R2-D2. So that's it for the R-Series Astromech. If you liked it, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want to check out our social media, or ways that you can help support this channel, be sure to check out the description down below. If you want to see more, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so that you get notifications. But more important than all that, remember, never wipe a droid's memory without its consent, and the Force will be with you, always.